strength. The woman, hearing him, was deeply moved, and thought, "My husband has won to this, what good is domestic life to me?" And she went forth among the sisters, and soon acquired the threefold wisdom. Thera. Pilandavaka. Pilandavaka. Reborn at Sāvatthī as a Brahmin's son, before the Exalted One became a Buddha, they named him Pilanda, Vaka being the name of his clan. He became a recluse, and acquired the charm called the Lesser Gandhara, deriving from that great renown. But when our Exalted One became Buddha, the charm ceased to work. He, having learnt that the greater Gandhara spell stopped the less, concluded that Gautama the recluse knew the former, and he waited on him in the hope of acquiring it, asking if the chance might be granted him. The Exalted One answered, "You must leave the world." He, fancying that this was a preparation for the charm, did so. To him the Exalted One taught the path, and gave him exercise in meditation, so that he, the conditions being ripe, attained arahantship. Now one who, in consequence of Pilanda's guidance in a former birth, had gone to heaven as a deva, waited on him morning and evening out of gratitude. Hence the monk was distinguished as one dear to the gods, and was ranked chief among the monks who were such by the Exalted One. And Pilanda one day, sitting among the monks, and reflecting on his success, declared to them how the charm had brought him to the Exalted One, uttering the saying, "O welcome this that came, nor came amiss. O goodly was the advice given to me. Among many doctrines moot among men. Of all it was sure the best I sought and found." Thera. Punnamasa. Puamsa. Reborn in this Buddha age as the Eon of Samidbai. A Brahmin of Sāvatthī, he left the world when a son was born to him, and entering the monk's order under the Exalted One, took the Four Truths as his exercise in meditation, and became an arahant. His former wife sought to seduce him from his faith, visiting him decorated, and with her child. But the monk, showing his utter detachment, uttered the saying, "All longings as to this or other life have I put far from me, as one who has seen himself truth, whose heart's at peace, who, self-subdued, in all things undefiled, discerns the world's incessant ebb and flow." Then the woman, thinking, "This holy man cares not for me nor for the child. I am not able to persuade him," went away. Thera. Gavaka younger. Gavaka the younger. Reborn as a Brahmin at Kausumbi, and hearing the Exalted One preach, he entered the monk's order. At that time the bhikkhus of Kausumbi had become contentious. Then Gavaka the less, not taking part with either side, remained firm in the Exalted One's discipline, and developing insight, attained to arahantship. And seeing in the bhikkhus quarrelsome tastes what might have been the downfall of his own good, he reflected with joy and enthusiasm on his own contrasted state, saying, "Abundantly this monk did rejoice. For the blissful truths the Buddha has revealed are his, and he has won the path of peace. And his the bliss where worldly cares are stilled." They seem to have been incorrigibly so, in spite of the Buddha's earnest and repeated teachings. Thera. Gavaka elder. Gavaka the elder. He was reborn in this Buddha's days as the son of Sāvatthī, a Brahmin of the village of Nailaka in Magadha. And he entered the monk's order because Sariputta had done so, and he knew that Sariputta was very wise. After he had attained arahantship, and was enjoying the bliss of emancipation, he uttered his saying to encourage his fellow disciples to make efforts. In wisdom strong, guided by virtue's rule, intent. To concentration's rapture given, yet vigilant. Having such treatment as brings you only good. So in the faith, with passions quenched, await the hour. Thera. Vanavaka. Vanavaka. In this Buddha age he took rebirth at Kapilavatthu, in the Brahmin clan of the Vakas. He was born in the forest, his mother being taken with travail while walking in the forest which she had yearned to see. He became one of the future Buddha's playmates in the sand. And because he loved the woods, he was known as Woodland Vaka. Later on, when he had entered the monk's order, it was in the forest that he strove for and won arahantship. And it was in praise of the forest life that he uttered his saying, replying to the monks who asked him, "What comfort can you get in the forest?" "Delightful, my friends, are forest and mountain. Crags with the hue of heaven's blue clouds. Where lies embosomed many a shining tarn. Of crystal clear, cool waters, and whose slopes the herds of Indra cover and bedeck. Those are the hills in which myself delights." Thera. Sāvatthī. Sāvatthī. In this Buddha era he was born as the son of Vanavaka's sister. When his mother heard that her eldest brother Vanavaka had left the world, had graduated in the monk's order, and was living in the forest, she said to her son, "Dear Sāvatthī, you should leave the world under the elder, and wait on him. The elder is getting old now." He, at this sole asking of his mother, and because of his previous aspirations, did so and, ministering to his uncle, lived in the forest. One day, when he had gone to the outskirts of the village on some errand, he fell very ill. And when medicine did not cure him and he came not, the elder, wondering at the reason, went and found him ill. Administering remedies and tending him, the elder, when dawn was near, said, "Sāvatthī, since the time when I left the world, I have not stayed in the village. Let us go hence into the forest." Sāvatthī answered, "Sir, even if my body stay now by the village, my heart is in the forest, for what reason though I lie here yet shall I go there?" Then the elder took hold of his arm and led him to the forest, teaching him. He, made firm by that teaching, won arahantship. Thereafter he uttered his saying, combining his Lord's words and his own, expressing both his love of seclusion and his achievement, his obedience to his Lord and the winning of Anna. The teacher spoke to me thus: "Sāvatthī, hence. Let's go. Here in the town my body lives. My thoughts are to the forest gone. So thus, prostrate though I be, yet do I go. No bond is there for those who understand." Khuddhaka. In the age of our Exalted One, he was reborn at Sāvatthī as a Brahmin's child, and called Dhamma. Knowing the three Vedas by heart, he when advanced in years heard the Lord preach, and left the world. Now King Pasenadi of Kosala became interested in him and provided him with necessaries, so that he had not to go round for alms. But it was when the great Subhada invited the Lord and his company to dine with her, that Khuddhaka revealed his powers and attainments, as it is written in the commentary on the Anguttara Nikàya. And it was to the monks that he recited this verse: 5 cut you off, 5 leave behind, and 5 beyond all cultivate. He who the fivefold bond transcends, a monk. Flood-crossed is he called. Thera. Bilathasisa. Bilahasa. In this Buddha age he was reborn at Sāvatthī in a Brahmin's family. And before the Exalted One became a Buddha he left the world to join the ascetic order of Kassapa of Uruvela, and tend the sacred fire. And when Kassapa was tamed by the Buddha, he was one of the 1,000 ascetics who obtained arahantship on hearing the sermon on burning. He thereafter became the tutor of the treasurer of the path. And one day, reflecting on the pure bliss of fruition and his own earlier discipline, in rapture he uttered a saying: "Even as the high-bred steer with crested buck lightly the plough adown the furrow turns, so lightly glide for me the nights and days now that this pure untainted bliss is won." Thera. Dasak. Dasaka. He, by his karma, was reborn in the age of our Exalted One at Sāvatthī, as the child of a slave of Anthapiyaka, and was by him appointed as gate porter of the vihara. Hearing of his virtuous conduct and his wishes, his lord made him a freed man, and said, how happy it was to leave the life of the world. He was initiated into monkhood accordingly. But from that time he grew slothful and slack of effort, taking no steps to roll back the round of rebirth, and sleeping much after meals. At sermon time he would get into a corner on the outskirts of the congregation, and sit snoring. Now the Exalted One, knowing his antecedents, spoke the following verse to him in order to stir up urgency. Who becomes slothful and in diet gross, given to sleep and rolling as he lies, like a huge pig with lots to eat? The dullard comes back again to womb. Hearing this, Dasaka grew agitated and, developing insight, not long after realized arahantship. Thereafter he thought the verse of the Exalted One became as a goad to me, and he repeated the verse. Thus, though uttered as a protest concerning food, it became the declaration of his Anna. Thera. Singalapitar. Singalapitar. Reborn in this Buddha age of wealthy parents at Sāvatthī, he married and named his son Singala, himself becoming known as Singala's father. At a later time he threw off domestic ties, and left the world for the monk's order. The Exalted One, contemplating his inclinations, gave him the meditative exercise of the idea of a skeleton. Taking it he lived among the Sakyans at Suang Sumarajara, in the Bisakala wood. Now in that wood a woodland sprite, judging that the Thera would soon grasp the fruition he labored after, uttered this verse. Lo! In the forest of Bisakala a monk lives, heir of the Buddha's grace, suffusing through and through this earthy frame, with thought intent, austere, of skeleton. Curse me, if he do not swiftly drive all passion of the senses clean away. Hearing that verse the monk thought, this fairy said this to me to call forth effort, and willing unfaltering endeavor, he developed insight and attained arahantship. Thereafter he recalled the fairy's words, and breathed forth that very verse as the declaration of his Anna. Thera. Kula. Kula. Reborn in this Buddha age at Sāvatthī of a Brahmin family, he entered the monk's order, but from want of mental balance could not concentrate on a given idea. Now one day going to the town for alms, he saw men conducting running water wherever they wished by digging channels. Within the town he marked out of the corner of his eye how the bow maker fixed the arrow shaft in his lathe, and leaving with full bowl he saw the chariot makers planing axle and tire and hub. So entering the vihara he dined. Then during siesta he pondered on these three modes of taming things, making them his goad, and applying them to his own need of self-mastery. So striving he not long after won arahantship. And connecting those object lessons with his own heart's taming, he declared Anna in this verse. The canal makers lead the stream. Bow makers straighten the arrow shaft. The joiners mold the wooden plank. The self it is that the pious tame. Thera. Ajita. Ajita. He was reborn, when our Lord was living, at Sāvatthī, as the son of the Brahmin who was predecessor to the king of Kosala. He became an ascetic as follower of Bavari, the learned Brahmin, who lived in the Kapiha park on the banks of the god Hārita. Now Bavari sent him, together with Tissa and Metya, to the Lord. And Ajita was so satisfied with the Lord's answers to his questions, that he entered the monk's order. Choosing a form of mental exercise he developed insight, and attained arahantship. Upon that he uttered his song of victory in this verse. All unafraid of death, nor glad to live. I shall lay down this worldly frame soon, with mind alert, with consciousness controlled. Thera. Nigradha. Nigradha. He in this Buddha age was reborn in an eminent Brahmin's family at Sāvatthī. And on the day when Jita Grove was presented, he saw the majesty of the Buddha and was satisfied, so that he entered the monk's order. When he had stirred up insight, he soon became able to exercise the 6 forms of supernormal thought. And pondering, in the bliss of fruition, on the advantages of the doctrine which leads us away from rebirth, he uttered this verse as the expression of Anna. No fear have I of fearsome things, for he, our Lord, knows well the ambrosial wisdom. The path where fear no wise a footing finds. Along that path the monks hold their way. Thera. Sittaka. Sittaka. He was born in this Buddha age at Rajagaha, as the son of a Brahmin of great possessions. And when the Lord was staying in the bamboo grove, Sittaka went to hear him, and found faith and so entered the monk's order. Choosing ethical conduct as his exercise, he entered a wooded spot, and there in devotional practice induced jhana. By that developing insight he soon attained arahantship. Upon that he went to salute the Lord. Asked by the monks, "Have you been strenuous, friend, in your forest stay?" He uttered his saying, to show he had been so, and to declare Anna. Peacocks of sapphire neck and comely crest. Calling in carrying via woods. By cold and humid winds made musical. They wake the thinker from his noonday sleep. Thera. Gozala. Gozala. He was born in this Buddha age in a wealthy Magadhese family. He came to know so Khuddhaka. And when he heard that the latter had left the world, he grew agitated, and thought, "If he who has so great an estate shall leave the world, why not rather I?" And entering the monk's order, he took for exercise the subject of ethical conduct, and seeking a suitable place, lived on the uplands not far from his native village. Now one day his mother, who daily donated alms, gave him, on his round, rice porridge prepared with honey and sugar. This he took and ate in the shade of that hill under a bamboo thicket. With bowl and hands washed, and refreshed by the appropriate treatment offered to him, he put forth insight without toil and, with mind intent on the ebb and flow of all things, attained the topmost meditation of the paths, winning arahantship, with mastery of the form and meaning of the doctrine. Desirous to go up to the hilly region that he might live in bliss while he lived, he made known his own experience in this verse. Lo! I who in the bamboo thicket dined off rice and honey, who now comprehend him worshipping, the ebb and flux of all these factors of my life, will hie me back up on my hill, to foster there the growth of heart's detachment, lone and separate. Thera. Segunda. Segunda. He was reborn in this Buddha age of wealthy parents at Sāvatthī. And because of his aspiration in the past, when he presented Kassapa Buddha with a fragrant chamber of sandalwood, that he might in one life be reborn with a fragrant body, he, on the day of his birth and his mother before that day filled the house with fragrance. Then said his parents, "Our son is come bringing his own name." And they called him Segunda. When grown up, he was induced to leave the world by the preaching of the Thera Mahasela. And within 7 days he attained arahantship. Confessing Anna he uttered this verse. Scarce have the rains gone by since I went forth. Yet see the seemly order of the path. The threefold wisdom I have I gotten now. And done all that the Buddha asks us do. Thera. Nandaya. Translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Nandaya. Born in this Buddha age at Kapilavatthu, in the house of a Sakyan Raja, his parents said, "He is born bringing us bliss." And they called him Nandaya. Grown up, he went forth, when Anuruddha and the rest left the world under the Lord. And because of his studies and his resolve made in the past, he soon attained arahantship. Thereafter he lived with Anuruddha the Thera and his friends, in the eastern bamboo wood. There Mara, the evil one, wishing to frighten him, appeared in a terrifying shape. But the Thera drove him away with the words, "O evil one! What can you do with those that have transcended your realm? It is you that by that will meet with defeat and ruin." To him whose thought is ever newly born from splendor of the path, and hard work has touched the fruit, if such a monk you assail, black-hearted sprite, to misery you must go. Thera. Abhya. Translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Abhya. He was reborn in this Buddha age as the son of King Bimbisara. The circumstances of his rebirth will be set forth later. Naputa the Jain leader taught him a dilemma to set the Samana Gautama, but in the Lord's reply he recognized the defeat of the Jain and the supreme enlightenment of the Exalted One. Thereafter, when the king died, Abhya grew anxious and left the world for the order. Through the preaching of the sutta on the parable of the hole in the yoke, he reached the first path. Again, stirring up insight, he realized arahantship. Upon that, glorifying that which he had won, he declared Anna saying, "Of him, the Buddha, of clan of the sun, I heard the word most eloquent, and hearing pierced the subtle truth of things, as it was the tip of hair by cunning bowmans are transfixed." Thera. Lamasakangi Ya. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Lamasakangi Ya. When Kassapa was Buddha, this monk left the world and followed him. Now after the Lord had preached the sutta on happy lonely, a certain bhikkhu talked with Lamasakangi Ya about it. And Arthara, being unable to explain it, uttered the wish, "May I in the future become able to teach you the happy lonely." The other answered, "May I ask you?" Of these two the former, when our Buddha lived, was reborn at Kapilavatthu, in the house of a Sakyan Raja. And he was very delicate, and covered with fine hair, and therefore he was called Lamasakangi Ya. The other was reborn at that time among the gods, and named Kandana. Now when Anuruddha and the other Sakyan youths left the world, Lamasakangi Ya would not. Then Kandana, to stir him up, came to him and asked concerning the happy lonely. The other knew not what he meant. Then Kandana reminded him. So Lamasakangi Ya went to the Exalted One and asked him if it was true that he had made that resolve in the past. "Yes, youth," replied the Exalted One. "And the meaning of it is to be understood in more than 50 points of detail." Then Lamasakangi Ya said, "Therefore, Lord, let me be initiated into monkhood." And the Exalted One sent him to get his parents' permission. He asked his mother, but she feared for his health, saying, "My dear, you are delicate. How can you leave the world?" Then Lamasakangi Ya uttered this verse: "Dabba and kusa grass and pricking stems, and all that hurts in brush and underwood, forth from my breast I'll push and thrust away, and go where I the growth may cultivate, of heart's detachment, lone and separate." Upon that his mother said, "Well then, my dear, go forth." And he gained the Lord's consent to be initiated into monkhood. After doing the preliminary exercises he went to enter the forest. And the bhikkhu said to him, "Friend, you are delicate. What can you do here? It is cold in the forest." But he repeated his verse, and entering the forest, devoted himself to meditation, and soon acquired the 6 forms of supernormal thought. When he won arahantship he declared Anna in the same verse. Thera. Jambugamika's son. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Jambugamika's son. He was reborn in this Buddha age at Kampa as the son of a lay adherent named Jambugamika, and became called after his father. While studying as a novice in the monk's order, he lived at Sakata, in the Anjana grove. Then his father, thinking, "I wonder if my son remains devoted to his life in the monk's order or not," wrote the following verse to examine him, and sent it to him. "And are you then not gratified by dresses? And are you then not charmed yourself to fashion? And is this fragrant odor, virtue fraught, wafted by you, and not by other folk?" When he had read this he thought, "My father is suspicious that I want worldly vanities. Even today I have not got beyond the level of the common man." Filled with anxiety, he strove and wrestled, so that he soon acquired the 6 abhinas. And taking the verse his father sent him as a goad, he finally realized arahantship. And both to confess Anna and honor his father, he recited the verse. Thera. Hārita. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Hārita. Reborn in this Buddha age at Sāvatthī, as the son of a wealthy brahmin, his parents wedded him to a Brahmin's daughter suitable in birth, beauty, and every other respect. And he, enjoying his lot with her, was one day, while he contemplated the perfection of her beauty, addressed by the order of things, that such beauty must needs before long be crushed out by decay and death. No, when but a few days had passed by, his wife was bitten by a black snake and died. Overwhelmed by anguish he sought the Lord and, hearing the path, severed his domestic ties and left the world. Now while he was training himself ethically, he could not make straight his heart. And going for alms into the village, he saw a bowmaker applying his tools and making straight the shaft of an arrow. Then, he thought, these men make even a senseless thing straight. Why do I not make straight my heart? So he turned back and, seated for siesta, stirred up inside. And lo! The Exalted One, seated in the air above him, addressed him by this verse. Now bend upwards yourself. Even as his bolt. The bowmaker, so do you, O Hārita, make straight your heart and ignorance cut away. Hearing him, the Thera developed insight, and soon became an arahant. He upon that declared Anna with this same verse. Thera. Uttaya. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. C. A. F. Rhys Davids. Uttaya. He was born in this Buddha age at Sāvatthī, as the son of a brahmin, and leaving the world on the quest of the ambrosial, he became a wanderer. One day on his travels he came where the Exalted One was preaching, and entered the monk's order. From the impurity of his moral principles he could not win the goal. And seeing other bhikkhus who had one confessing to Anna, he asked the Lord for a lesson in brief. The Lord answered, it follows that you, Uttaya, must purify the rudiments, and he taught him them in brief. Uttaya, accepting the lesson, called up insight, but in the process he fell ill. In his anxiety he put forth every effort, and attained arahantship. Inasmuch as he won to perfect attainment in the face of such a condition, he declared Anna, with reference to his illness. Since sickness has befallen me, O now, let there arise in me true mindfulness. Sickness has now befallen me, it is time for me no more to ease or delay.